Hello friends, today we will be discussing about energy flow through an ecosystem. So how does energy flow happen in an ecosystem? So we will be discussing about various levels of energy flow. So in that we will be discussing about the food chain and the food web. So here when we say energy flow through the ecosystem, this refers to various trophic levels. So trophic levels, in various trophic levels, how does the energy flow from one trophic level to the next trophic level is what we will be discussing. So we will be discussing about food chain and food web. So under food chain we will see two different types of food chain, that is one is grazing food chain and the other one is detritus food chain. So we will see both this, and then we will see food web, and we will see what are the different types of biotic interactions in a food web. So these are the topics that we will be discussing. Now we have already discussed the basic things, so I will not be going into the basic things like ecological succession or homeostasis or energy flow. So such things I will not discuss here. So let's see. Let's begin. First, let's understand what is meant by trophic levels. So what are trophic levels? Now trophic level means it is each step in the food chain. So trophic level refers to each steps, or like we can say that from one level to the next level. So this is the trophic level, that is each step in a food chain is called a trophic level. So the trophic level, we can say it is a representation of energy flow in an ecosystem. So it represents how does the energy flow in an ecosystem. Now it is also a particular position of an organism in the food chain. When we discuss about the food chain, we will see from one trophic level to the next trophic level how does the energy flow. So here the trophic level is also a representation of a particular position that every organism occupies in a food chain. So in a food chain there are different trophic levels, and each organism has a particular place in the food chain which is represented by the trophic level, and it indicates how far it is away from the plants in the food chain. So why we say plants? Because plants are the primary producers. So they are the producers, and with the help of trophic level we can also understand how far is each organism from the producer or the green plants. Okay. So let's see, this is how a trophic level looks like. So it begins with the producers, that is the green plants. So green plants are the producers, they produce their food. So green plants are called the producers, and they are also called the autotrophs. So they are called the autotrophs. So green plants or autotrophs. Then we have the primary consumers, that is those consumers who eat the producers or the plants. So these primary consumers, they are herbivores. Herbivores means those organisms which eats only plants. Okay. So this herbivores are also called heterotrophs. Okay. So another name of herbivore is heterotrophs. Then in the next level we have the secondary consumers. The secondary consumers are also called carnivores. So carnivores, they eat both plants and animals. Carnivores eat plants and animals as well. Now these carnivores are also called again heterotrophs. So heterotrophs means consumers. So autotroph means producers and heterotrophs are consumers. Now in the next level we have the tertiary consumers. They are also carnivores who consume both the plants and animals. Here they are the tertiary consumers. Then we have the top carnivores or the quaternary consumers. So this is how a trophic level looks like. So these are the various trophic levels. Now please come back to the definition that we have given for trophic levels. So first thing is that it represents the energy flow. If you look into this trophic level, you will see how does the energy travel at different levels. So that is why it is called a representation of energy in the food chain. So how does the food or the energy flow? It's a representation of the energy flow. And secondly, it also helps us to understand the position of various organisms. If a organism is a herbivore or a carnivore or a top carnivore, this can be understood from the help of a trophic level food chain. Then also how far it is from the producers or the green plants. All these can be understood with the help of different trophic levels. So I hope this concept is clear for you. Now let's look into the characteristic features of energy flow. So energy flow through the trophic levels from producers to the trophic levels. Now see, from the producers, that is from the plants. So plants, green plants are the producers. From the plants to the consumers at the primary level, secondary level, tertiary level and quaternary level. So the energy flow from the trophic levels, in the trophic level from the producers to the different trophic levels. In case of a food chain, it is unidirectional. So what is meant by unidirectional? Unidirectional means that it is in one single direction. So it is in one single direction. This is called unidirectional. Now second point is that the energy level decreases from the first trophic level upwards due to loss of energy in the form of heat at each trophic level. Now let's come back to this trophic level. See, from the producers, when it reaches the quaternary consumers or the top carnivores, there is a loss of energy. From first stage, that is from the producers to primary consumers, in between there is a loss of energy and this is in the form of heat. Then again from primary to secondary consumers, again loss of energy. Then from secondary to tertiary consumers, loss of energy, and finally when it reaches the top carnivore, again there is a loss of energy. So this is called a loss of energy in the form of heat in each trophic level. Now usually not more than 4-5 trophic levels are there due to energy loss at each trophic level. So again coming back to the trophic level, see, maximum steps can be 4 to 5. Why? Because from the first to the last trophic level there is a loss of energy. Therefore the trophic level cannot continue for more than 4 or 5 levels or steps because of the loss of energy. When it reaches the 5th level, by then the energy loss would be there and therefore the levels cannot continue. So this means that there is a significant loss of energy at every trophic level. So I'll just write down significant loss of energy. So there is a significant loss of energy at every trophic level. Now let's come to food chain, but before that the basic idea that I want to give you is that the trophic level interaction, basically there are 3 types of interactions. So 3 type of trophic level interactions. So what are these 3 type of trophic level interactions? The first one is the food chain. The second one is the food web, and the third one is the ecological pyramids. All of this we will be discussing. So ecological pyramids. So these are the 3 types of interactions at different trophic levels. So first we will be coming to food chain. Let's first understand what is this food chain. So food chain, from the name itself it is clear that this is in the form of a chain. So how does a chain look like? It's unidirectional. It looks like a straight line. So it is in the form of a chain. So here there is a transfer of food energy from the producers, that is the green plants which are the producers, through a series of organisms, repeated eating and being eaten link. So this is called a food chain. So basically food chain shows who eats what in an ecosystem. So who eats what? This question is answered through a food chain. So food chain represents which organisms eats what, and each step in the food chain is called a trophic level. So each step from the primary producers, this is the first trophic level. Then the primary consumers, we have the primary consumers, second trophic level. Then we have secondary consumers, which are the third trophic level. Then we have tertiary consumers, the fourth trophic level. So each step in the food chain is actually a trophic level. Now a food chain, as we said, it starts with the producers and it ends with the top carnivores. Now let's take some examples also. But before that, so it starts from producer organisms and ends at the apex predator species, that is the top carnivores. Now, food chain is a linear network of links in a food web. So, why linear? That's why I said in the beginning, it looks like a straight line. So, the chain, it looks like a straight line from one level to the next and again continuing like that. And as we said, there are two types of food chain. We have discussed that in the beginning. One is the grazing food chain and the other one is the detritus food chain. So, these are the two types of food chain. And the food chain also describes energy and nutrients movement through an ecosystem. So how does the energy and the nutrients move through an ecosystem is described through a food chain. Now coming to the first category of food chain, that is the grazing food chains. It begins with the primary producers. So the grazing food chain, it starts with primary producers, and who are primary producers? They are the plants or the autotrophs. Now in a terrestrial ecosystem, that is in a land-based ecosystem, major producers are herbaceous and woody plants, and in aquatic ecosystem there are various species like phytoplankton, algae and higher plants. So these are the producers in both terrestrial and aquatic ecosystem. Okay. Now it includes eating of a plant by an animal and eating of an animal by another. So this is how the grazing food chain looks like. So in a grazing food chain, I'll give you a example here. See, in a grazing food chain, this is one example. Okay, the grass is the producer. They are the green plants. So producer, grass is eaten by the grasshopper, which is eaten by again a frog. Then a frog is eaten by a snake, and a snake is eaten by a falcon or a peacock. So this is one example. Another example is some vegetation. It can be plants, it can be some trees also. They are the producers. So this is eaten by rabbit. Next, the rabbit is eaten by a fox, and the fox is eaten by a wolf, and the wolf is eaten by a tiger. So this is another example of a food chain. So these are two examples of terrestrial ecosystem food chains. So here we will see, this is the first trophic level, second, third, fourth and the fifth trophic level. Here the first, second, third, fourth and the fifth trophic level. So these are two examples of terrestrial food chain. Now coming to aquatic food chain, as we said, in aquatic food chain, mostly it is the phytoplankton who are the producers. So phytoplankton or the algae or any such producers. So in the first level we have the phytoplankton, which is eaten by zooplankton, then which is eaten again by the small insects, then by the small fish, larger fish and crocodile. So this is how aquatic food chain looks like. Now we will here see that what is common in case of terrestrial and aquatic food chain in both these examples, or in three of these examples, is that all of it begins with green plants. So beginning is with green plants or the producers, and that is why it is called a grazing food chain. I hope you got what is meant by grazing food chain. Grazing food chain is nothing but a food chain which begins with the green plants in the first trophic level. This is called a grazing food chain. So I hope that is clear for you. Next we have the detritus food chain. Now this is unlike the grazing food chain. So the difference is that in case of grazing food chain, the food chain begins with the producer or a green plant. This is in case of grazing food chain. Okay. Now in case of a detritus food chain, it begins with dead organic matter. So the beginning of the food chain, it starts with dead organic matter, not with primary producers or the green plants. and it is made up of decomposers which are heterotrophic organisms like the fungi and the bacteria. Now, the decomposers, they secrete the digestive enzymes that break down the dead and waste materials into simple inorganic materials which are subsequently absorbed by them. And they meet their energy and nutrient requirements by degrading the dead organic matter or the detritus. That is why it is called a detritus food chain. So here the food chain begins with dead organic matter. This dead organic matter is further decomposed by decomposers or heterotrophic organisms like the fungi or the bacteria. So that is why it is called a detritus food chain. I will explain an example, then I am sure you will understand this better. See, this is an example, dead leaves. This is a dead organism or a dead leaf. It is eaten by a wood louse, which is an insect, not insect actually, it's actually a decomposer. So then this decomposer is further eaten by a bird, black bird. Okay, so this is one example. Another example is, here there is detritus. Detritus is dead organic matter. So dead organic matter, this is taken up by a primary detritus feeder. So this is a kind of worm where this worm will decompose this dead organic matter. Then it is again eaten up by a secondary detritus feeder. So these are two examples of detritus food chain. Basic difference between detritus food chain and grazing food chain. So the basic difference between both this is that the grazing food chain begins with plants or primary producers, whereas detritus food chain, it begins with dead organic matter. So these are the differences. Next, in an aquatic ecosystem, a large fraction of the energy flow through the grazing food chain. So in aquatic ecosystem, the dominant kind of food chain or the food chain that is mostly seen is grazing food chain, which starts with the green plants living in the aquatic ecosystem. Now, in case of terrestrial ecosystem, a much larger fraction of energy flow through the detritus food chain than through grazing food chain. So these points are all very important for your preliminary examination. So understand that in case of aquatic ecosystem, the dominant type of food chain is the grazing food chain, whereas in case of terrestrial ecosystem, it is the detritus food chain which is dominant over the grazing food chain. So these are the two things. So I hope the concept of food chain is clear for you. I hope what you have understood what is meant by food chain, what are different trophic levels. Also you understood the difference between the grazing and the detritus food chain. So these are the three concepts that we have discussed thus far. So I hope this much is very much clear for you.